Our top story this hour, the ongoing escalation in the Middle East will be a theme at the United Nations General Assembly this week. And as President Biden prepares to address world leaders today, in one of his final speeches on the world stage, the president is set to discuss global challenges like the climate crisis, as well as the ongoing conflicts in Sudan, the Middle East, and Russia's war on Ukraine. That's according to senior administration officials who spoke to NBC News. Officials also said President Biden will highlight his efforts to restore America's global leadership during his term.
Let's bring in right now White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Jake, thanks so much for being with us. What message does the president want to get across to the General Assembly today?
Well, first, thanks for having me. Today's going to be something of an unusual speech because, as you note, it's the president's final address to the world as president. And what he's going to say is that at times of great change and challenge over his more than 50-year career, he's seen the United States help pull the world together to overcome them. And he's optimistic that we can do that again today. So he will talk about all of the changes and challenges we're seeing right now, but really send a clear message that we've seen these kind of moments before. We've come through them stronger, and he is confident we can do that again.
The president has been extraordinarily frustrated, at least over the past 6 months, on Benjamin Netanyahu pushing away any proposed ceasefire. It looked several weeks ago like we may be getting close, with many inside his own cabinet, his defense minister, many people in Israel, across the Middle East, allies of Israel, Arab allies, the EU, the United States, all supporting a plan to bring the hostages home and begin a badly needed ceasefire. And yet Netanyahu pushed that away. Now, of course, the war erupting with Hezbollah. What has the president given up on the possibility that Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas will ever sign a ceasefire deal?
No, he absolutely hasn't given up. We remind ourselves frequently of what George Mitchell said the day that the Northern Ireland peace process was concluded. He said these kinds of negotiations are 700 days of failure and 1 day of success. So there have been difficulties and setbacks. We've had challenges getting the prime minister across the line. We've had challenges getting Hamas's leader, Sinwar, across the line. But we're determined to keep at it. And the president this week in New York will be huddling with other leaders to try to bring about a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza, and really critically to try to avert an all-out war in the Middle East, something that we have worked hard to avert since October 7th.
Well, let's talk about that, Jake, because it does appear for the moment anyway that Netanyahu and the IDF have turned their attention, at least for now, up to Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon. 1,300 targets, they say. They struck terrorist targets, taking out members of Hezbollah, civilians as well. Obviously, this comes after not just months, but years of Hezbollah attacking Israeli civilians in the north of their own country. So what is the risk here? Obviously, you have said, you know what, Israel is justified in defending itself here, but you worry about the escalation. What do you worry about may come next year?
Well, look, as I said, since Hamas attacked Israel in that vicious slaughter and massacre on October 7th, we've been worried that this could spill over into a broader regional conflict. And there have been moments where that worry has really spiked. It spiked in the days following October 7th. It spiked again in April when Iran launched 300 missiles and drones, and we defeated that attack. And it's spiking again now. But we have averted it in those previous spikes, and I believe that we can still find a path forward to get de-escalation between Israel, across that northern border between Israel and Lebanon, and bring about a diplomatic solution that allows people to return to their homes.
We kind of use wider war as this catch-all phrase, a euphemism for something. From where you're sitting, what does a wider war actually look like in the Middle East?
Well, for one thing, we saw the beginnings of it, as I said, when there was that big direct attack from Iran against Israel. So if a country like Iran got brought in a larger way in this conflict, other countries as well began to get engulfed in it. That's what we would see as being a wider war. Right now, what we're watching across that northern border is the continuing, sustained exchange of fire. And, you know, your viewers should remember how this all started. It started because Hezbollah attacked Israel, not because Israel attacked Hezbollah. So Israel is trying to send a clear message that it's not going to tolerate a situation where its citizens can't return home, and it is going to try to create an outcome where, in fact, they can, some 80,000 of them. But we believe the best way to do that is not through escalation into war. We believe the best way to do that is actually through a diplomatic solution, and that's what we're working on this week.
So, Jake, Israel's defense minister, Gallant, said the other day it's moved north. The center of gravity has moved north. This has shades of 2006, when Lebanon just erupted and pretended a larger war then. Today, how do you deal with a government led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, whose objective appears to many people to be focused on eradicating Hezbollah and Hamas at the same time, every last member of Hamas, he said, at the expense of the hostages? When will the hostages be priority one?
Well, I can tell you they are priority one for President Joe Biden and for me. I've met with the hostage families many times, 2 or 3 times just in the past month alone. And I have seen firsthand the heartbreak that they are going through. And we stay up nights trying to figure out a way to get across the line on this ceasefire and hostage deal. And we have spoken out directly about our concern when we've seen the Prime Minister not take steps that we think are necessary to get to that deal. At the moment, I would say the biggest challenge is actually that Hamas and Sinwar don't want to do a deal. But if they do, if they are prepared to come to the table, it will be incumbent on us to get the Prime Minister to the table, close this thing out, and that's something the President will speak about today.
What steps has he not taken?
Well, as things stand, since the brutal murder of those 6 hostages, including a young American, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, Hamas has actually refused to really engage in a discussion about the terms of what would bring the ceasefire across the table. They've essentially taken a step back. And there's a reason for that. It's because Sinwar is actually rooting for chaos. He's rooting for that wider war that we were just talking about. It's our job, working with the mediators, Qatar and Egypt, to try to drive Hamas back to the table. And then it's our job to get Israel in a position where they can accept the ceasefire and hostage deal that wasn't just President Biden's proposal, it was a proposal fully embraced by the entire UN Security Council and the wider world. And it's one that would leave Israel more secure. And to your point, one that would bring the hostages home, including American hostages.